If you've heard of wisdom literature in the Old Testament, the authors of these books, they grapple with the meaning of life. They wrestle with themselves, with our God, and with some of man's biggest questions, questions that have loomed over mankind nearly from the beginning. Do we understand the unforgiving march of time? Is there a purpose to suffering? Is God wise and just? What are we to make of times of despair, hopelessness, anxiety? Why have we been so blessed? And which one of these blessings matters the most? What is the very purpose of our existence? The things that happen to us between the day of our birth and the moment of our death. The books of Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon are all included. We read in Proverbs 1, 2, and 3 that the Lord has given us wisdom literature to reveal true wisdom and to provide instruction in wise dealing in righteousness, justice, and equity. Besides offering wisdom around these really big, important topics, this literature can also be really fun to read. There's poetry, prose, narrative, like storytelling, maxims, songs, and prayers. Wisdom literature is important to me, and it's important to you, in both the meaning and application of the message in our lives, and in the way in which it's composed. In this present moment, let's pick just one of these books and one of these chapters to talk about. I'm going to pick Ecclesiastes chapter 3. In the broadest sense, the themes presented by the preacher include holding life with an open hand, aware of its transience and not clinging too closely to any one experience. The author uses here the Hebrew word habel, which can be lost in modern translations as a certain meaninglessness or vanity. The essence of the word's meaning here is that life is a vapor. It's real. It does indeed exist, but it's not really that tangible. You can see it, but you can't reach out and grab it. It's gone before you know it. It really was there, but it's not anymore. Second, focusing on our attitude towards the present moment, taking in the present gifts from God for the blessings that they really are. Third, being hopeful that life has a deeper meaning, even when we cannot perceive it, even when we lack that understanding, when we can't see that bigger picture. In his book, Living Life Backward, David Gibson tells a story about working with his son on a Lego project. There were 1,000 pieces, all different colors, shapes, and sizes. But the builders weren't too stressed about putting them all together. After all, they had the instructions in their hands, and step by step, they could see clearly where the road would lead them. They knew exactly where they would end up and how they were going to get there. In Ecclesiastes 3, the preacher challenges us to trust in God when our outcomes are far from certain, when we're burdened, even overburdened, by the obligations of our lives, our family, and our future. It's in God, our Creator and the Sustainer of all things, who holds the blueprint to our lives. It's in Him we should trust. Indeed, isn't this the very definition of faithfulness? The first 8 verses of this chapter are very popular. I mean, like pop culture famous. The Byrds wrote a song over 50 years ago that's still played in many places today. Turn, turn, turn. We all know the line, for everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. Well, that's Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1. Let's read through the first 8 verses together. There's a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to uproot. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to tear down, and a time to build. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones, and a time to gather them in. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search, and a time to give up. A time to keep, and a time to throw away. A time to tear, and a time to mend. A time to be silent, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace. The poetry is beautiful. Inside each of these extremes, we find the things of life. The ranges of emotions between weeping and laughing. The sentimentality between keeping something and throwing it away. The thoughtfulness between silence and speaking our mind. The great swing between mourning and dancing for joy. the years of experience between our birth and the moment of our death. So poetic. It's beautiful to read. Turning your eyes to the prose in the back half of the chapter, it's maybe not as smooth to read, maybe not as easy to read, perhaps, but it's still so meaningful. After all, it's here in verses 9 through 27 that Solomon is translating what that poetry of the first 8 verses is all about. I challenge you to read this chapter. Read it and focus on the unique messages of each of its 2 halves. We're both comforted and challenged by the fact that our every moment is lived in front of a God who is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-present. It gives meaning to our lives, to the experiences within our days. It also gives us a purpose, knowing that only the things of God will stand after the halo of my life disappears, after the vapor of my life is no more. Solomon challenges us to live out that knowledge inside each of our present moments, focusing on the satisfaction of knowing that the seasons of my life flow from the Almighty God, from His grace, from His goodness, and from the blueprint that He holds in His hands. Stay safe and well, my friends. Thanks for checking out this video.